Hey, we're going. Yeah. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Art Conversations. This time, we're so glad to have our friend Angela Denner. Angela, thanks for being with us. It's
Thanks,
great to
Mark.
chat. Just introduce yourself, then, Angela. We obviously know you and love you, but many people might not know you. So, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, I'm Angela. I've been at Capsifier Church for a while. I live in Southampton. I have a job in the sort of scientific world, but I'm very much a creative at heart. I love songwriting and poetry and photography. Those are my main things.
Come on.
You've made a wonderful album, and you're in the process, aren't you, of making another one at the moment?
I am in the process of making another one, but it kind of got slightly kiboshed by something that's going on at the moment.
More chance to do more writing instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're going to talk to us today a bit about poetry, which is really exciting. And we would just love it if you would read to us. I know you wrote a poem. Was it about a week ago or a week and a half?
It was exactly a week ago. Yeah.
Oh, wow. We would love to hear it. So if you'd be up for reading it, and then we'd love to just chat about it and sort of how you got inspired for it.
Sure, absolutely. So this poem doesn't really have a title at the moment. I have two. One of them is kind of Meltdown in Marks and Spencer's, and the other is Light of the World. So that's a work in progress, but the actual poem is more or less finished. So it goes something like this. I stepped inside. I saw him hide. I saw him turn away. I held a smile for quite a while, which then began to fade as with furrowed brow he asked me how I dared to be so bold, to share this space with unmasked face amidst the frail and old. I didn't mean to be so close, I didn't see you there. I didn't see your fragile frame amidst the shirts and summer flares. I'll step away, you can have your day of feeling safe and free. But yes, in part, I think you're right, I was thinking of only me. Of difficult decisions in the Apple store, the SE or 11 Pro. I was thinking of my summer holiday. Will I even get to go? But now I step outside of self into your well-worn shoes. What burdens are you carrying? You're worrying you'll have to choose which set of grandkids you'll see next time, or if you'll even live to see another Christmas. Will you actually get to give the presents that you're buying now in the red-hot summer sales? With your pension check that stretches further with every baby that wails its way to this broken world with shifting tectonic plates. And now I see your pale blue eyes swim with anxiety and weight. And I know you see me as a threat, but I long to take your hand. I know that I'm a stranger, but I would sit with you. I would sit with you and hear your tales of days gone by, of sweet young love and war. Of aching bones and weary soul and joints a little sore. And the media, the Daily Mail, so full of doom and gloom. But there's a light that burning brighter and oh, it's coming soon and you don't see it, but there's definitely hope. I'm telling you, it's true. It doesn't matter that you're 86 and think you're nearly through. And this light is for everyone, of every tribe and race. Hold on, my friend, hold on to hope, and you will see his glorious face.
Oh, so good. Oh, it's powerful. It's emotional.
So good. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. I managed not to cry that time, which is great.
You did good.
I feel like you must have done some acting classes because that was so well read out as well. It's brilliant.
Okay, thank you.
Some performance.
Did that actually happen? Was that like a real thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's kind of a composite poem. So it happened in the sense that I did go to Marks and Spencer's and there was someone that crossed my path, gave me a dirty look and sort of dashed away.
Yeah.
But it wasn't exactly the old man in the poem, but I have seen and known men like that and have wondered how they are in this season. So it's kind of drawing in a few elements. But yeah, I did have an encounter in Marks and Spencer's.
And in that moment, did you think, I'm going to write a poem about this? Or did you come home and sort of, you were mulling over that experience and you're thinking?
No, I didn't. So what actually happened was I was going to talk about songwriting because that's my thing. I've been writing songs since I was 9. I have written poems, but much more songs than poetry. And I was thinking about how I would explain to you that sometimes when you write, it's about making the ordinary extraordinary. So I was kind of mulling over this example in my brain of like, well, it's like telling a story. I could either say, oh yeah, I went to Marks and Spencer's and this boat got well eggy. Or I could say, and then I just thought of the first 2 lines of the poem, you know, I stepped inside, I saw him hide, I saw him turn away. I held a smile for quite a while, which then began to fade. And so I just wrote these 2 lines, and then the next day they were kind of nagging at me, you need to go on this journey, you need to go on this journey. So I was actually sat having my quiet time. I was reading like Isaiah and had 3 chapters to read on my reading plan. And I was so distracted by these lyrics, like I just wanted to write the poem. So eventually I sort of, you know, put that on pause. And I wrote this poem and it just came tumbling out because all of the stuff was in me. And it's a bit like the magician's trick with all the handkerchiefs, you know, it just keeps coming because often in life, I think we have so little time to just actually do that, you know, bring the handkerchiefs out and say, what is this? What colour is this? Why is it that colour? What's actually inside? And when I got into that, there's 2 transition zones really in this poem. There's when I actually step into the shoes of this old man, and then when I step into hope at the end, I start talking about Jesus. And as soon as I stepped into the shoes of this man, I just started crying. I just had this sort of empathetic experience of what must he have been thinking, like, he's alone, he's probably a bit strapped for cash, he's having to choose which grandkids to see, he hasn't seen his grandkids maybe except through a patio window, and all this sort of empathy and compassion kind of rose up in me.
I love your sort of that term of like, it was nagging you saying like, will you go on this journey with me? That's I love the way you've worded that. Would you expand on that? Like, do you find that happens to you often, that you'll have like a phrase or just almost an idea or something that just is sort of doing that pull like that makes you kind of go, right, I need to give this some time. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, very much so. So most of my songs or poetry, the inspiration doesn't strike at a convenient moment, you know, I'll be at the traffic lights or at work, and there'll be something that pings in my mind or my heart, and I'll just write it down or type it into my phone, and then you have to come back to it later and go on the journey. And sometimes that's a discipline, but sometimes something is so intriguing that it draws you in and you think, I've got to make time to sit down and go on this journey. Or sometimes it's so compulsive that I will maybe be at work in the operating theatre and I just start writing a poem on the back of paper because it's there and in the moment. So a mix.
As long as you're not writing on the patient's arm whilst they're on the flat out on the... Oh, sorry, I need you back. I was just on the second verse.
That is so cool.
Wow.
I'm really intrigued as to when you get this inspiration, do you find that you're moving through this journey and writing as a process of emotion for you? Or do you have an audience in mind? Do you see what I mean? Is it like a cathartic thing, or are you thinking, I want this to get out somewhere for somebody to touch someone?
Yeah, in all honesty, I never have an audience in mind, and I think that's because I've created from a young age in my bedroom as a slightly sort of shy younger person, never even dreaming that anyone would want to listen or that I'd have the courage to share my art. So that has forged a very sort of firm foundation of, I'm just doing this for me because I love it, which is actually really, really helpful because you're not kind of looking for affirmation. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like it on Facebook when I get some likes and some comments. Who doesn't, right? But predominantly it's for me and my own, as you say, catharsis, my own way of emotionally processing life events.
Really...
Do you, I was interested in what you said about the transitions in that poem. I want to just stick talking about that poem for a little bit. When you say, as you were writing it, and the transition in which you were in the chap's shoes, and immediately you feel the emotion overwhelming you. That is a crazy thing, isn't it? Because your mind, your creative impulses, wherever that's coming from, is almost tricking your own body into something, into experiencing something that isn't your personal experience. Does that make sense? So, but is that for you? Do you feel? I mean, that's such a powerful thing that art does, and that specifically probably poetry, or I'm sure all sorts of art does. That must be a win when you have a moment like that, though, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I'm quite an empathetic person anyway, so I'll be crying at X Factor, you know, auditions and that kind of thing, because my emotions sort of connect with other people, and I feel it. But it wasn't just when I sort of moved into that empathy zone of stepping in his shoes. I also felt, if I'm honest, like some repentance as well. Like there was a repentance of thinking, who have I judged in the supermarket for looking at me in fear? And, you know, who have I just not taken the time to think, why they're afraid? What's their story? You know, so there is a mix of empathy for the man, but also some sense of repentance for viewing people on a very surface level and not actually digging deeper. And I think, I mean, oh gosh, don't get me started on empathy. I think empathy is so powerful. And someone said recently, what did they say? Something like transformation happens through deep participation. That was you on Sunday, Louis. And I think
that's from that book that you recommended.
Is that right? You know, you can engage with art intellectually, like, oh, that's a good poem, that's very clever, I like the structure of that, well done. Or you can come with an open heart and say, I'm going to step into this and allow myself to be affected, allow myself to wash it over me. And that's what I'm doing in the writing of the poem. I'm stepping into the man's shoes and having a sort of immersive experience and allowing his stuff to just wash over me and transform me. But then with the sharing of the poem, it's an invitation to others. Will you step into this poem? Will you allow all of these emotions to wash over you and transform you? And you can engage in empathy. So I feel very strongly that art is an invitation into empathy. And storytelling, it's so natural for us to tell stories. We tell stories all the time. I went to pick the kids up today and I couldn't find one of them, or I had to wait ages at the petrol station. You know, we're always telling stories. If you can choose words and arrange words artistically, those stories become poems. So I think I love to use art as telling stories, because I think it gives people an opportunity to step into another world and experience other people's situations, which kind of binds us together as a common human experience, if that makes sense.
For sure.
I love that, you know, when you're talking about, you're doing your quiet time, you're doing your reading, and then you're feeling this nagging, and you sort of put that away and you go on this journey. But there's this sense that God was taking you on that journey anyway, and peeling back a bit of his heart and saying, this is what, you know, because it leads to repentance. So often, you know, doing something creative, we think, oh no, I should do the, you know, there's sort of compartmentalize. But I think as a creative person, you've just described this thing that's saying, actually, even in that creative process, I'm processing stuff with God, and he's revealing his heart for this guy, which that's amazing to me. I think that's quite freeing.
It is freeing, and I'm a huge fan of there not being a secular or sacred divide. You know, I'm not separating my quiet time from creativity in that instance, but I never separate them. You know, we live with God, we tabernacle with God, he's in us all the time. Jesus was always out and about on the highways and byways, and life is just all mixed in together. And I think it's very unhelpful to try and separate secular and sacred art, as some people use those labels. Like, it's all, you know, it's all sacred. Life is sacred, isn't it?
So good. So good. I couldn't agree more. The with the I want to sort of push into the people's response to either your songwriting or your poetry. Obviously, you say about how you've made an album, at least one that I know of, Mute of Songs. You're talking about making another one, and you've written poetry, and you post some of your poems online, and you like, you know, obviously that is in order for people to hear them and to listen. How do you find people's response to your poetry, in terms of, are you satisfied? Are you satisfied that people get it? Or is it not a question in your mind?
Definitely not. I think with social media is that people rarely write detailed comments. I've had the most detailed feedback that I've ever had with this poem, because I think it's really touched people, because it's of this season, you know, it's something that describes something we're all immersed in, you know. But generally people will just write, oh, that was nice, or that was beautiful. And I would love to know more how it affects them or how they feel. But, you know, I'm not going to run around saying, tell me more, because it seems a bit indulgent. But sometimes, occasionally, I get feedback which is not necessarily verbose, but there's just something really special about it. Like I was singing, I wrote a poem about depression a few years ago, and I turned it into a song, and I sang it last year in an open mic night in literally Matravers, I think it was. And there was a woman who was drinking at the bar, and it was quite clear to me that she had depression. She just had that sort of countenance, and she sort of wandered into the area where I was singing and then wandered back. And I was at the bar later, and I just sort of was buying a drink, and she just turned to me and said, oh, I like your song, and then turned back, and that was it. But I knew that she had experienced some kinship, that I had put language to something that she had been feeling, that she felt seen or known. And it's hard to put your finger on it because she didn't express that in words, but that sense of like, oh, I've connected to someone, they've connected with me, is really special. So that kind of feedback is...
And that's what art does, or creativity does, doesn't it? When it's, well, what you hope it does is it connects us. We connect, like I can connect with the poem, your poem, because like you, I can connect with you and your experience in that moment, and I can see myself in the story somewhere. And so I connect, like she maybe sat at the bar connects, and like you say, she feels a little bit known. And that's the beauty, really, isn't it, of expressing yourself through poetry or songwriting, art, whatever. But on the other hand, so you can see there's a common good. There's a great thing. Like that's a wonderful thing. If we can facilitate connection and facilitate understanding of just a sort of common ground of humanity. But we're also, how do you deal with the fact that, do you ever struggle with, like, I'm sure you do, because you're human. Well, why would I put my stuff out there? Who am I to think I should write this down, or anyone should listen to me? That, you know, that kind of self-doubt or almost like insecurity about that. Do you know what I mean? How do you deal with it?
Definitely. I just have to keep reminding myself that, you know, there's no one exactly like me. There's no one exactly like you. There's no one that's had my story exactly, or who would express it in my way. And it is hard, particularly if you're, you know, recording an album or putting it out there as a piece of art that is worthy of actually purchasing or investing in. It's really easy to think, well, they've done it better, like buy their album. Yeah, I don't really know how to answer that. I think it's just a belief in the diversity, that we're all so unique and that there's a place at the table for everyone. And, you know, some people say that the sky is so big, no two birds collide. And it takes all of our expression, of all of our creativity, to have the full richness that humanity is made to express. But yeah, it's a discipline. It's a discipline, staying in the right headspace of, you know, I am unique and I have a voice, I have something to say, so I'm going to say it.
I think that's really helpful. I think
what a great answer.
Yeah, that's really helped me. And I think
so
that will help many people if, you know, if they listen to this. That is so helpful. Yeah, and like a beautiful analogy of the sky's so big, no two birds collide. You know, I couldn't agree more, but I think that's amazing. Thanks so much.
And that, yeah, considering you don't know how to answer the question, that was pretty good. But that whole thing of just uniqueness, that no one has shared your experiences. No one knows your story. No one knows the combination of things that have made you who you are. And that's what you have to offer to the world. But it's quite vulnerable, I should imagine. Putting stuff out there and kind of, because just knowing you're a very emotional person, and I know how I think I would feel, that just that feeling of like, this has taken a lot of emotional energy to put together, and now I'm presenting it to the world. Do you want to hide once you've done that, or are you quite good? Are you sort of seasoned enough now at putting stuff out there that you just think, okay, it is what it is, and people may understand it, may not understand it? Do you see what I mean? Because I think that is such a stumbling block for creatives. They write, or they do, they might write poetry or songs, but they keep it to themselves because there's a sense that it needs to be polished or finished or perfect to a degree that isn't perhaps accessible, and also perhaps will take many years off them putting it out there to get to that point. Do you have anything that you could say into that sort of mindset?
I think you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with that level of vulnerability. So if you write something that's very personal about a marriage breakup or something, it may take some years before it's sensible and wise to start telling that story publicly. I think we just have to check our own hearts and say, is this something I really want to share? What happens if someone says something unhelpful? Just put it through that litmus test. But I also think, if it doesn't cost you anything, if you can just share something easily, probably not that valuable. I think the more it costs us to a degree, the more precious it is. I know when I sit in some really intimate music gig and someone's really sharing from their heart, I'm like, oh gosh, I feel so honoured that they've invited me into this secret place in their heart, and it's incredibly beautiful.
Wow.
But yeah, I think we just have to find out where our boundaries are, decide on what level of vulnerability we're willing to go to, and then stick to that.
Absolutely.
And there are some things that we write that are never appropriate to share. They're just too personal, and it's for us and the Lord, or us and our spouse or close friend, whoever, and it doesn't get outside of that, and that's okay. Yeah, for sure. So good.
I was going to ask if you've ever feel like you've sort of a gig or something, or when you've been out playing or reading poetry, do you ever feel like you've overstepped that mark and then had like a wild vulnerability crash?
Yeah, it's weird. My vulnerability is actually more about singing and probably showing emotional elements of myself than the actual lyrical content, if you know what I mean. Like if I get a chord wrong or my voice is slightly out of tune, I'm more embarrassed about that than actually sharing my heart, I think.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's really
curious. But yeah, I often have a vulnerability sort of hangover and think, oh my God, that was awful. But that's part of the journey, isn't it? You just have to keep going.
Yeah, so helpful.
I loved in this poem you shared with us today, obviously you end it with like this future hope, and there's obviously like a spiritual element to the message and to the poem. Do you always obviously you love Jesus and your life is about him, and you love the Lord, and so he's all around you and everything you do. So I can imagine that a lot of what you do is about the Lord. A lot of what you write is about your spiritual journey or the gospel. But do you always find that is always in everything in your work, or are you intentional about putting that in, or are you intentional about keeping that out? Like, how does that work?
Definitely. Well, I mean, I am intentional about trying to put some hope in my work, even if it's just a tiny seed. I went to a creativity conference about 18 months ago, and someone said, if your work hasn't got hope in it, it's just a cynical rant. And I was like, oh, I don't know if that's true exactly. But I was like, oh, have I spent the last 20 years writing cynical rants? 30 years. So that just made me a bit more mindful.
They weren't looking at you at the time, were they?
I don't think so.
Amazing.
But
Yeah.
I'm not that artist that's called to put the scriptures to poetry or explicitly mention Jesus per se. That's just not my gifting. You know, it's some other people's gifting. But I just think, well, if he's in me and I live my life yielded to him and I'm stewarding the things he's given me and gardening my heart, like, it's going to come out. Like, my worldview, my perspective, it's all just going to bleed into my work in some way. Someone said recently to me that it's not your art that it's the gift to the world, it's you that's the gift to the world, and Jesus is in you. So I just think of it like a sort of a Russian doll, you know, there's my art and then me and then Jesus is in the center of all that. So it's just all mixed in together. So I don't really
I like that.
think much about who I'm trying to, you know, target with my missional poems. You know, it's just life, isn't it?
It's life, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, amazing.
You obviously are a doctor and you work in a hospital, and I know that you have used poetry in the hospital and your music as well. How do you view the relationship between art and therapy? Or being therapeutic?
Well, I'll come back to that question in a sense. The way that I use my art is specifically aimed at my colleagues, so not the patients. So I am at the moment the kind of well-being lead in my department, and I started an art gallery about a year ago with some photography and poems and stuff, really just to give my colleagues a way of connecting with their emotions in some ways, because we can be very sort of, I'm closed down, I'm going to push everything down because I'm in doctor mode, and it's just not healthy. I mean, you need to do that sometimes because you can't go around the ward crying, but just to try and, you know, awaken something in people, awaken their emotions, or even just give them beauty, visual beauty, to make their lives more lovely if they're in the workplace. But recently, one of my colleagues at the beginning of the year took his life, and I actually wrote a poem about that with some hope in at the end and just put it in the gallery. And I had a lot of feedback about that. People found it helpful, and so art in that sense was really powerful. You know, it was just a way of trying to give language to something that we were all feeling, try to encourage people to go on a journey with their emotions, but in a very softly invitational way. In terms of using art as therapy, I mean, goodness, I don't know where to start. It's hugely powerful, isn't it? I was watching a workshop recently of an artist who has been working with sex trafficked people in Africa, people that have been kidnapped by, you know, Boko Haram and that kind of thing, and she was getting them to draw their own self-portraits, just by way of, you know, telling the story and giving them identity. And she's now doing a PhD with UNESCO to try and validate the value that art has in emotional trauma processing for groups of people like that. So yeah, it's hugely valuable. I mean, I'm no expert on art as therapy, but it's just very powerful.
Well, and even in your own experience of working alongside your colleagues in the hospital, you know, the art gallery you're creating and that you put together for them, it is therapeutic, isn't it? Like you say, it is sort of a way of engaging people's emotions, providing beauty. I mean, there's something, I was going to say, beautifully healing about beauty, but there is, isn't there? Like when we are exposed to beauty, it's just good for us. It's good for us as humans, and that beauty as obviously comes in many shapes and sizes and forms. And it sounds like the kettle's boiling.
I mean, you know, we're wired for beauty, and ultimately that's the beauty of Jesus. But I was in an art gallery once in Norfolk, and I was just staring at this painting. It was so colourful, and it was as though I could perceive that it was filling me up. Like I had this stomach for food, but I had this stomach for beauty, and I could feel it like filling up as I was just staring at this painting. And that was a really powerful experience, actually, because it just reminded me how important beauty is. And I think most people probably just go to nature for beauty. You know, people who aren't Christians don't have a paradigm for their need for beauty. They probably just go and stare at a tree or flowers. But to provide beauty in all its different forms for people, I think is a really godly thing.
Absolutely.
And beauty is not always necessarily joyful. You know, you can express lament in such a beautiful way, but there's still beauty in it. So it doesn't have to be this sort of happy, clappy, joyous, la 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 quality. Beauty is found in all different sorts of emotions, I think, depending on how they're represented in art.
That's making me think loads of things. I'm just thinking about, even in a hospital setting, I imagine there probably is quite a lot of lament in that setting, because you're dealing with life and death a lot of the time. And you think about the power of knowing that you're not alone in that space, and that others have felt these deep emotions. And, you know, you just think that actually the options could be limitless if there was that kind of space for people to be able to just, it's about that connection and being known, and knowing that you're not alone when you're feeling these deep emotions, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so good. I just want to sit and ponder now.
It's so good. For you then, Angela, what is it that you find beautiful in terms of inspiring? Obviously you write about everyday things, you can spot these moments, and you have like that idea of inspiration. I love that about pulling the handkerchief, or like, you know, the thing out of the hat, bit of like a Mary Poppins bag, or something else just came out, and I think that's helpful. But like for you personally, what would you do? What do you do in order to find beauty, or to experience something that nourishes your soul, you know?
And do you think it's important as well that you do that, you know, as a creative person?
I think a lot. So my experience of beauty is not sort of limited to the visual. And one of my inspirations, or one of the things I love that inspires me, is metaphor. So when I think of something as a metaphor, I find that really beautiful and really inspiring. And I was thinking about this the other day, wondering if part of my brain is always just like looking for metaphor, or looking for something to write about. And I was remembering a time when I worked in Dorchester Hospital, and I'd been up all night. I was like totally knackered. I'd been on labour ward, and I was coming out of the building on the way to the sort of rest bedrooms, and the sun was just coming up, and I was totally tired. But before I'd even sort of turned my head to look at the sun, like in slow motion, my head, this lyric came of the sun kissed the sky and made her blush. And I'm like, where's that come from? Like, there's no neurons firing here at the moment. And I was like, is that the Holy Spirit, or is that just my soul is always looking for metaphor and beauty?
It's a great line.
Yeah, so I get very excited about metaphor. I just do. Or even things that I observe in life, like I wrote a poem called The Power of Beauty, and it was inspired by this time I was in a airport, and this young woman barefoot was like pegging it, running for the gate, and there was this crowd of people that just parted like the Red Sea, and it was beautiful to watch. But I thought, I wonder if she'd been like middle-aged and, you know, quite plain, would that have happened? I don't know. I don't know if people just got out of her way because she looked youthful and beautiful. And it got me thinking about, you know, the power of beauty almost as this invisible force. So I think there is inspiration everywhere, but you have to look for it. You know, you have to, and I think artists are those people who look, and they look a bit further, and they look a bit further, and they ask questions, and more questions, and more questions, and that's how you unearth the gold in the dirt that's all around us. And Just coming back to empathy, if I can just tell this story, I think questions are such incredible keys to unlocking other people's stories. And I was at work just last week, and there was quite a delay on my next patient coming because we were waiting for their COVID swab. And I was standing in a room with 4 people. I don't do small talk. I don't really like small talk, but I can do it if I have to. So I went around the room asking people what their names meant. And there was this Chinese lady who I've only worked with like twice before. And she said, "Oh, my name means she will learn to be clever." And I sort of tilted my head and looked at her in a kind of, that's interesting. And she said, "Yeah, I was born in China under the one baby policy, and I was born at 32 weeks. And the parents said that the doctor said I would probably not survive, or if I did survive, I would be disabled. So they said to my mum, 'Do you want to keep her, or, have another go at having a healthy baby?' And my mum said, 'Yeah, I'm going to keep her, and I'm going to call her, she will learn to be clever.'" And I was just floored by this story. Like, I didn't really realize that, I guess that's still a thing in China, in my generation, my lifetime. And it just that simple question of like, "Oh, what's your name mean?" just led to this profound connection and empathy and understanding of a different aspect of humanity that I had no personal experience of. So, in life generally, I think questions are so important to ask of people, but in art as well, you've just got to dig deeper with questions and looking and questions and looking.
So good.
Oh, I love that.
I'm resisting the urge to ask what your name means.
Oh, well, it just means messenger, like angel. So
great.
I've got a message.
I'd love for you to read your poem to us again, Angela, if you would, before we finish. But before we do that, if there's anything else you'd want to share, anything on your heart that you'd want to just talk about, we'd love to hear it. You've educated us loads.
I think I probably don't have anything else at the moment.
It's been such a good conversation. Honestly, thanks so much for everything. It's so good to have these conversations. And actually, it's amazing where questions, like you say, the importance of questions.
Yeah.
We aren't particularly, planning these in terms of the questions we're asking. We just want to see the conversation go. And you've taken us on a great journey. So thanks so much for being willing and keen. And
I would just say one thing, if I can. It's classic contemplator, think for 5 minutes and then answer. I would just say that, I think obviously we're all born creative, but children have such a natural ability to make up songs, make up rhymes, Bethan, Louis, in a tree, Kissing. Kids just write that stuff and then it just evaporates if it's not nurtured or invested in. So I don't think it's something amazing to be a poet. I think that a lot of children have that in them, and it just needs drawing out and nurturing and a place to flourish and to be encouraged. So, and it's never too late. Like, you can learn to write poetry even if you don't have natural ability. I think you can learn some elements of writing and poetry. So there's hope for everyone, is what I'm saying, if people want poetry writing.
So get writing, folks.
You're leaving us with that seed of hope. It's good.
That's great. No, thanks so much. And let's hear your poem again. We'd love to hear it.
Now that we know you've met this man.
I stepped inside. I saw him hide. I saw him turn away. I held a smile for quite a while, which then began to fade, as with furrowed brow he asked me how I dare to be so bold, to share this space with unmasked face amidst the frail and old. I didn't mean to be so close. I didn't see you there. I didn't see your fragile frame amidst the shirts and summer flares. I'll step away. You can have your day of feeling safe and free. And yes, perhaps in part, I think you're right. I was thinking of only me, of difficult decisions in the Apple Store, the SE or 11 Pro. I was thinking of my summer holiday. Will I even get to go? But now I step outside of self into your well-worn shoes. What burdens are you carrying? You're worrying you'll have to choose which set of grandkids you'll see next time, or if you'll even live. To see another Christmas where you actually get to give the presents that you're buying now in the red hot summer sales, with your pension check that stretches further with every baby that wails its way into this broken world of shifting tectonic plates. And now I see your pale blue eyes swim with anxiety and weight. I know you see me as a threat, but I long to take your hand. I know that I'm a stranger, but I would sit with you. I would sit with you and hear your stories of days gone by, of sweet young love and war, of aching bones and weary soul and joints a little sore. And the media, the Daily Mail, so full of doom and gloom, but there's a light that's burning brighter, and oh, it's coming soon. And you don't see it, but there's definitely hope. I'm telling you, it's true. It doesn't matter that you're 86 and think you're nearly through. This light is for everyone, of every tribe and race. Hold on, my friend. Hold on to hope, and you will see his glorious face.
That's so good. Thank you so much for just sharing yourself with us, sharing your sort of bit of your process and your journey and your gift of art. It's really, you're really skilled as well. So we're really, really thankful. And we're thankful that you've taken the time out to just chat with us today. And I know loads of people, I certainly found it really, really helpful. So I know loads of people will.
Awesome. Just before we sign off, Angela, just how do people find you and any poems you're writing or songs you're producing?
So I have an Instagram page which is Angela Denner UK, or at Angela Denner UK. So that's got a video channel with some of my poetry.
Great.
Awesome.
Brilliant. Well, we'll stick the link in the description wherever this thing ends up. But Angela, thanks so much. We love you, and it was great to chat to you.
Yeah,
thank you
awesome.
so much. And for everyone listening or watching, I think it was a great chat, and we want to do it again, Angela. So maybe another time we'll have you on and we'll continue the conversation. But there will be more art conversations coming up. So stay tuned. But for now, see you later. Thanks, Angela.